We're going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would like to open up the floor for public comments.
My voice carries, don't worry. So I do hope to God that COVID is over, just like everyone else in this room and everyone feels. Unfortunately, we have to keep a really close eye on it still. If you check the state site, data is from 2/17, the Thursday before vacation, to March 3rd, this past Thursday, and reported 2 staff and 2 students being positive within our district. When checking the school district's dashboard, it's unclear that the week the latest data point of 2 is from. Another mom emailed Christy and got clarification that 2 cases in Toronto and that confirmed none in the elementary schools, although no date is next to this bar on the graph. In the survey, 56.5% of the parents surveyed wanted an email alerting them if a positive case was identified. Did this email go out to Toronto parents? If so they could be high alert to test their own children? I'm in the elementary school. A lot of people have siblings in Toronto and vice versa in the elementary schools. So this is really important for us to know and to be aware of. We no longer have the masks or distancing that 57.3% of the surveyed parents believe contributed to keeping our schools open and in person. We need to monitor any cases as the spread will go unchecked by masks, and an outbreak could spread like wildfire within our schools and our community. 69.3% of the surveyed parents believe the school district should define parameters when to remove, but also reinstate masking and COVID regulations, something that was overlooked by most of the committee. Worcester County and most of Massachusetts is green for the new CDC color coding system. The system includes % hospitalization out of COVID rates and also hospital bed availability, which is really important. But it's also important to note that one can no longer just compare rates between Worcester, Boylston, and Berlin without this % hospitalized and bed availability. CDC raised the cases per 100,000 from 50 per 100,000 as a benchmark for indoor masking to 200 per 100,000. And this increase is very dramatic if you don't take into consideration the 2 other factors that then put you into the yellow, green, and orange categories that they now have decided upon. I hope the school committee can educate themselves on the current guidelines, stay up to date on the rates within our towns and surrounding districts, and also keep the dashboard up to date so parents can make themselves aware of current rates within the district and how much they need to be aware of symptoms from their own children. That's about it. Thank you, Jessica.
So we're moving on to communications. We still have an open seat in Berlin with no applicants. The position is only a 7-month commitment, and all of our seats are up for re-election. Thank you. In November, all of the seats will be up for re-election, so it's a great opportunity for someone to come in to try to see if they would like to be on the school committee, to give a small amount of their time to being on the committee. When I was appointed, I looked at it as dipping my foot in the pool before jumping in or swimming. If anyone's interested in applying for this, we are going to have an April 5th meeting where we will interview any and all applicants at that time, and we're really like some people to step forward from Berlin specifically because it is a Berlin seat. Let's see. Item number 5, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Mike?
Yes.
Second? Second. Julie? Discussion? All in favor? Aye. And an aye as well. The motion to approve the consent agenda as presented passes. Item 6, we're going to start with reports. Mr. Zaney.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm going to start with the update on the masking protocol. Just referring to. So just in general, the way this stuff usually works is the school committees write policy, which is what we're going to do, and it's the job of the school committee to write a procedure of how that policy is going to be implemented. So there's really, when it comes to this masking in all of the COVID, there's really three possible states you can be in. It can be a recommendation, it could be just a guidance, it's a suggestion, or it could be a mandate. If it's a mandate from the state or the federal government, that's something we just have to do. There's no arguing that. It's something under the law. If it's a recommendation or guidance, then there's some more options. And that's where we would write some protocols. And so that's what I wanted to talk about tonight. So again, this is not the case of a mandate. A mandate's totally different. We have to abide by state mandates that are backed up by the Mass General Law, Mass Code of Regulations. So that's the background on this. And so Carol and I worked with the Superintendent's Advisory, which Jessica is a member, and so is Lori. We have a few other members too, and Sally is a member also. And we decided that we were going to use the latest COVID-19 community level guidance. This document, this is February 25th, clearly lays out three different categories for when you should be wearing masks. It's county level data. This is not state level. This is not town or school level data. But it does use three different parameters that are laid out in another document, if I can find it. Yes. So this new guidance relies on three things. It relies on the COVID hospitalization admissions over the previous week, the percentage of hospitals that are occupied by COVID patients, and new cases per 1,000, either above 200 or below 200. Again, as Jessica referenced. So it's this guidance here, and then what we thought we'd do is we'd add an FAQ to go along with it. So that would sort of be the guiding document and guiding two documents. And so this will be a running FAQ that we will keep on our website. We will send this out as soon as the school committee approves their face covering guidance. We had a draft of the policy that's going to be voted on tonight, and we tried to make the protocols work in line with the policy, which is what we're supposed to do. So I'm going to quickly go over these FAQs. I think if there's any questions about this, we'll answer that too. First question was, and so we just generated 5 questions. We basically asked, if you're a parent, what would you be interested in knowing after you looked at this document? How long does our community have to be in each category before we change our masking guidance and recommendations? So we will make a decision after 10 days from the time identified as having moved to the new category. So you move to the category, 10 days from there. The reason we did that is because there's a 7-day lag. So the category is based on what started to happen 7 days before that. So it's not 7 days, and then another 10 days. 7 of those will be one full cycle. So we essentially will be in a category for 2 full cycles and then 3 extra days that we usually need to make the decision, get the communication out to the community. So, question number 2, what other data will you consider? We're going to consider town and school vaccination rates as well as COVID positivity rates. We look at CDC data as really 1 point, although they considered 3. And again, that's one of the things that as an advisory, we're still working on. There's some details that have to be worked out with that. But this is this is a living document, so we're continuing to work on it. Number 3, will the masking guidance be applicable to extracurricular activities? This guidance will only apply to indoor activities. There is no masking guidelines for outdoors. we will follow the MIAA guidelines also. So if the MIAA says they have to wear masks outside, then we obviously have to follow that. But this guidance, when we decide to put masks on, if we do, if we recommend that to the school committee and then they vote to do it, then it will apply just to indoors. Outdoors will still remain unmasked unless we're told to do differently. For social distancing and other layered mitigation strategy to be considered in addition to masking. We are always considering additional mitigation strategies. We continue to provide cleaning and disinfection, as well as participation in symptomatic testing and the at-home testing. We moved all the social distancing guidelines. That's been since the beginning of the year. I know some of the buildings have a little extra space, so they move students apart, but we have to consider that what we're trying to do is we're trying to get back to normal for our students, normal pre-COVID. Other considerations would be turning back on hand dryers in the restrooms and the drinking fountain access, which would shut all those off. We have the filling stations are still on, and the cooler, 5-gallon bottles that we use. So if available, those are in place also. So again, I know Steve was there and asked me. I said, we'll keep everything as is until April 1, and then we will revisit that. When will General Assembly, the regular lunch period be phased back in, and are they mask dependent? Again, our overarching goal is to normalize the school day as much as possible. We will return to regular lunch period and assemblies. So those are the five. Those are the five so far. I guess is once we put these out, parents will ask additional questions, and we will just keep adding to this as we go along. Again, I want to stress that if it's a mandate from federal government and state to put masks back on, we need to do it. If it's a guidance recommendation along those lines, we'll make a recommendation based on the data we collect. We'll make a recommendation to the school committee, and they will they'll have a vote on it. So that's new masking. These are the protocols go along with the policy that this committee is going to be voting on tonight.
And so this is incorporated in that policy that's in red.
It's not incorporated into the two separate things.
Yeah, that's why. So it's going to be 2 votes.
No, you don't vote on protocols. I'm just telling you what they are. So
No, we're not going to vote on the protocols, but so I guess you're proposing here that the school committee votes, if the school or the town moves into the color from the CDC, whatever the color is, green, orange, is it? I don't know.
Yeah.
So if we move into that, we wait 17 days, right? Well, it would be 10 days, right? And then, does the school committee vote?
yeah, they would vote on it, most likely.
So is that in the policy?
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, I know you
I was gonna say, if we voted in, then we follow this procedure. If
Okay,
we vote on
that's what I'm
policy,
asking.
yeah.
Yes, that's what I'm asking.
The only reason I wanted to respond is because I had the same question that you did with Jeff earlier.
Yeah, so you'll vote on the policy, and
Yeah.
these protocols go along with the policy. And once you do this, that gives the schools.
Yes, okay, that's what I was asking. Yes.
So
when-
if you
when-
change that, we would probably most likely have to change this.
Right,
Because the
Okay.
protocols have to be in line with.
that's what I was trying to understand. All right, I got it now. Thank you.
So
that
that
makes
you
sense.
have one vote on policy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Jeff, can I ask a quick question? Remember you said Steve, so you said April 1st, Steve had asked, is that about this being turned and it's not until April 1st?
Yeah, that's just the water fountain. I mean, they have
That's it.
water. We've turned all the water on. You don't use the bathroom, you don't drink, you don't take care of your nose. When we say so,
Right, so April 1st.
Any hand dryers, most likely. We turn those off earlier, but, again, I just didn't want to do everything at one time, but I feel pretty confident about that one because when those were turned on, there was the idea that you would have the virus on your hands, and there's, very little evidence anymore that that's any kind of an issue, so.
What do they have now, paper towels?
Paper towels, right? Yeah.
I was just like.
Just
What are they
the
doing in the
guys.
bathroom now?
Yeah.
For lunch.
Yeah, you're lucky.
Yeah, Joanne.
Good.
Get a friend in front of you.
Are there any other questions on masking protocol for Jeff before he moves on to the MOU?
Can we make a comment about that, or should we wait for the policy discussion?
You can, yeah.
I saw something online, and I think I brought it up too, that the committee did consider anything from the survey or anything like that in making policy. I just want to say, we did consider everything we were presented with. Everything that was presented was considered, and then a decision was made, and a vote was taken.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, I will say that when this policy subcommittee met, we had already been thinking about these protocols, so it was considered, the CDC guidance was considered when the policy was written. So, I mean, the public wouldn't have known that, but it was considered.
You guys just wrote this policy, yeah, after we voted.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the MOU, I'm going to do this with Carol, and we've had police presence in our school part-time. We've had police officers assigned to our schools for a while. There are 2 policy exhibits that are currently on the books. They were from 2008, I believe, and they were just signed by the school committee, so they really weren't even MOUs. They were procedural documents. Procedural documents, again, are usually written by the school, so we didn't want to take them out. We didn't want to replace them until we had something else substantial. So tonight, we're going to talk about the MOU that was developed by the district attorney's office. It's a template. Everybody uses the same one. Their attorneys vet it. I've sent it out to our attorneys who vetted it. We didn't have a problem. Basically, says the template that everybody uses. When you look at it, you can see that it cites all of the laws. So this is the one we'll be following. 2 things. We want to tell you this is provided because, again, this will replace those policy exhibits. But the other thing is, typically MOUs are signed by the police chief and superintendent. About 50% of the time or so, the school committee also signs off on it. We don't care, I mean, either way. Actually, I'd probably like to have a school committee member, chair, sign off on the MOU. We don't have any plans to make any amendments or changes to this. There's just places we have to kind of flesh it out, and put our school names in there, put some personnel names. But typically what happens is, it's a police officer, so that end is covered by the police department. One of the things we've never had is the evaluation of the SRO, which the superintendent takes place in, is provided for here, and also training. There are training courses for SROs now that didn't exist before. So that's all covered in here. And so what we would do, so we just had it in tonight for a discussion. And I suppose if your name is on it, you'll have to have a vote on it next meeting. But again, it would just be a matter of, putting your stamp on something that already exists and formalizes that the relationship. Carol, I know you had some stuff you wanted to kind of talk about.
Yeah, just that we've been working as a crisis team with the 2 police departments and fire departments for a long time now. And when they brought this forward, this just really formalizes the parameters for both parties. And it gives us some kind of, it gives us flexibility with them to be able to utilize them in ways we may not have wanted to do before. I mean, I think it also speaks to our partnership with them and honors their presence in the schools. Unlike other districts, they're not in our schools. Some of them have places and they stay all day in the schools. That's not the case here. Our resource officers go in and out of the schools, but they're very active in terms of speaking in classrooms, doing the DARE program. They've helped us with Alice drills, doing trainings, and as I said, we meet with them at least twice a year and other times informally. They're just around. So I think this was brought forward from the two police chiefs, and they're really asking us to create that partnership in a stronger way with them. They feel that now is the time. The last one, as Jeff mentioned, in there was 2008, and we haven't revisited. Having this in place also gives us an opportunity to look at this annually with the police chiefs and say, you know, what kind of job are the SROs doing, what else could we want them to be able to do? So I think that's going to be really important. Also, as you read through the document, you'll notice there's no financial commitment from the district. It's all comes from the town through the police department. So it's already funded through their overtime pretty much, or any other way they choose to fund this. But we were asking for your endorsement, really, and your opportunity to sign along with us when we signed this MOU with the police chiefs. As Jeff mentioned, we were going back. Once we talk to you about this tonight and you have a chance to read it, we're going to be meeting with them in a month ahead with the two police chiefs sitting down, going over this document more thoroughly, making changes to it that we felt were most appropriate to us as a district and with the police department. And then we'll bring back to you before next month's plan, read, and vote to endorse. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to look at it yet. If you had any questions, Jeff and I would have to go over.
I did want to
flags or questions you have.
one thing I wanted to point out, one of the questions well, first of all, the school committees, superintendents shouldn't be writing these documents. These should come from, it should be a state level document that covers all the bases. One of the things that's covered in here, and I think parents worry about a lot of having police presence in the school, is whether or not they will take part in discipline. So under Mass General laws, they're not allowed to take part in general discipline. Obviously, if a student commits a crime, then the police officer sees it, then they act. But they don't, and there are some states where they do, and there's been issues with that. So we don't do that here. We have good relationships with our police departments and so, and we know those lines, and I know the principals work closely with them, so we don't have any of those kind of issues.
So admittedly not well informed on this topic. However, I do know that there are other districts, especially some of the larger urban school districts in the state, where they've looked at different models for liaison officers. I know Worcester recently moved, I think Boston has too. I'm in no way suggesting we do that. But can you just help us understand your perspective on the role they play within the schools without needing the 13-page document? And maybe we'll inform us a little bit on why some of those other districts may have moved in different directions and why we are moving in the direction where.
Well, the original intent of the SRO, and this goes back to the mid-90s, was to build a rapport between the police departments and the school district, so that when children saw police out in the community, they didn't look at them as their adversaries and enemies, that they saw them differently than that. So, we've continued to do that. So we want them to think they're friendly, and we want them when they're out on a Saturday or Friday. We don't want them to have an adversarial encounter with them. So, that was the original goal, and it still remains that, but it's grown. So they do, as Carol said, they do a lot of professional development in the buildings. They do, what's the program? No, not the Alice.
Oh,
the
Dare.
students.
Dare.
Dare. So they do variations of that. I know we should have a Dare officer, but they do variations of that. So, it's basically that core focus is really still, in my mind, what it's about. It's having police in the building with the safety aspect. That hasn't changed. Plus, they bring a lot to the table in terms of just stuff we can do in the buildings. Just, they walk through the buildings, and as you know, we put, safety film on all of these windows. That was as a result of our police liaison saying, that's a lot of glass on there. Those kids can go through it, someone can try to come in. There's a very, very cost-effective way to deal with this. So as far as why other districts have gone in a different direction, I don't know. Well, the bigger ones obviously because they have bigger issues and they have, maybe more criminal activities, but I don't know, I can't speak to that.
I would just add to that, we're very fortunate to have two wonderful officers who are dedicated to the schools. I mean, they all are really, but these two in particular, Dave Holding in Berlin, Goody, he's known as, he's just there with the kids from when they're little, and he knows them all, and Rob Barbato in Boylston. These two men have gone out for trainings above and beyond to know understand the laws and how to work with young people. I think it speaks to something we talked about at the last meeting that Jake Milano was here to talk about. They want to build the relationships with the children while things are good, so that they trust them and that they may think twice before something happens, and that they know that they can go to them in a safe and respectful way. So I think that's what these gentlemen model with them, and I've seen it through the years. We used to have Duncan Baum over in Berlin, and he used to keep their dare. I used to tell the story. He used to keep their dare essays. And when he used to see them as teenagers, sometimes he'd get in trouble. He would. That's exactly what he did. Adam. He would pull out their essay and read it to them. I mean, that was a kind of experience that it was, and that's who they are. We just feel very fortunate that they support us and we support them. And I think that makes the difference from other districts that are choosing not to. I don't think their presence is seen in the same way that we create, and it's a relationship.
Yeah, that's right.
And they think differently than we do. I mean, we don't think about, obviously we think about school safety, but in a different way. I mean, they see these little things and they call your attention to it. It's just little tweaks here and there. And those are invaluable. That's the difference between someone walking in a building and somebody not. So they really are valuable to have around.
Do the principals want to add anything? I mean, you see them all the time.
If Goody was here, he'd give you a quick hour. Quick hour. So,
Yeah, I think that with our relationship, it really, as Carol and Jeff had stated, it really is about building relationships and not so much about the discipline, because they'll be the first ones, to say that we as administrators have more power than police do with the changes, with the changes in the laws, and they want to, be partners with us. They come in and they speak to students in the health classes, work with the counseling office whenever we have a crisis or a need. We just make a quick phone call and they're here. And they not just to offer guidance and support. Some of the larger districts, they have, very intense security systems. The students and staff have to go through daily. There are schools that have actual courts in their schools. And so it looks very, very different than it looks here. And it really, I think it just, the way that we are doing it really just adds to the relationship that we have to develop over the years with them.
If I could just add one more thing, you talked a lot about the officers in school, but I could share, at least with Goody and in Berlin, there's also an outside presence. There are, from time to time, unfortunately, things that happen in the community. And Goody's been so good with kids about kind of just taking them aside and reassuring them, because he knows what's happening out there, whether it's a medical emergency or something less well-known. That relationship, because it's been established for so long, kids look to him for that, and it really part what makes that relationship between him and my kids that much stronger.
I remember as a building administrator, I would meet with our SRO every Monday morning, and he would, in high school, and he would go through all the things that happened in the community and all the possible issues that I might see that morning. So you could attend to that stuff before it became a problem. So, and then so, there's the formal piece, but there's also, as they're saying, it's that relationship that you build with it. It's sort of informal, and everybody knows the guidelines, they know what lines to stay in between, so I think they push it to have in schools these days.
It sounds like it's working out well here. A couple, you mentioned discipline that didn't even cross my mind, a question about them involved in discipline, but you mentioned specifically this new written document helping build the relationship even more. Like, what specifically will change in the schools with this, or will anything change?
I don't really foresee anything changing, I would say, Jeff, right, other than, yeah, I really don't see anything that's actually happening kind of on the ground, what's happening in the schools right now as far as that, but if you go back, if you compare this MOU to the previous one, it just shows how much they can do and how much they can help. The fact that they go for training now and it's written down.
So just formalizing what you
Yeah,
kind of
Formalizes
do years.
it, right, exactly, it just formalizes more how much they do and how much we can do together. There's some pieces in there that, even gave us some ideas as we went through it about other things we can do together. And then we're building that, I think that's something we've been building through the years with the crisis team in general.
So things will be changing in the schools, but mostly positives.
Yeah.
Well, there's an educational component in here that was never formalized for them, so, they'll bring that stuff to us, so they'll go to a training program, an SRO training program that we really never had, and they'll bring those ideas back to us, so we'll have a lot of that. The superintendent really was never, and the schools were never really in on a formal way to evaluate, I was going to write something up, but at least I can bring, something back to the table, so that's all laid out in the lawsuit.
We are going to move, Mr. Conway is not here, so we're going to skip his presentation, he will give it at our next meeting. And we're going to move on to Ms. Cassandra.
Thank you. I'm just going to step up here for a moment. So this is our annual mid-year benchmark discussion. Currently in the elementary schools and historically only in 6th grade, we have used AimsWeb, which is an online program, and it's a universal screening program that allows us to progress monitor students in the areas of reading and math. And it really helps us guide instruction, but also provides us with interventions and targeting those students who are in need of some sort of intervention, whether it be in math or English language arts. So at Tohoto, students in grades 6 through 8 have completed their mid-year benchmark assessments. Due to the transition, previous years we had done map testing in grades 7 and 8. This year, however, there was a decision that was made, really I believe it was over the summer and really in the early fall, to change from map testing to AimsWeb testing in the 7th and 8th grade as well, to offer some continuity between the elementary schools up all the way through the middle school. So what you're going to see, or what you do see in your report, is that we only have mid-year benchmark data for our 7th and 8th grade, because the fall was a time in which we uploaded all of the 7th and 8th graders into AimsWeb, as well as our 6th grade teachers trained our 7th and 8th grade teachers as well on the platform and the use and the data analysis. So this report is for 6th grade from fall to winter. The light blue is our winter scores and the darker blue are our fall scores. So in math, and reading, up above is the reading. As you can see, a significant amount of our students are at average, above average, or well above average. I'm very pleased with the growth that we saw in our average students, because I think that really shows, obviously with COVID last year, I think it really shows the difference, sort of that in-person instruction and the consistency of that in-person instruction can make, even if it's just over a short period of time. Sally, do you remember when the 6th grade team did the fall testing? Was it in right away?
Yeah.
September? Okay. So, you're talking only, approximately 3 months. And we're seeing some nice growth in reading. In math, again, very similar. I think one of the standouts is here. The number of students that, were well below, fewer students in the winter. Same thing with below average, that then it obviously increased the number of students in the average category. In the 6th grade, the 6th grade team has done an amazing job of developing a program that's called the Quest program. And it is really an intervention block that is fluid, and it is really designed, to make sure that, whether it be after our Ames testing and they're able to sort of target students who need extra support or assistance in certain areas or certain parts of the curriculum, that they can actually tailor that intervention to those particular students. But then they also do it throughout the year in areas of history and science as well. So it really is it is a lot of work for them to be able to do this, but it has shown amazing results in the 6th grade. So we're very pleased with these. And as I said, the result, 91% of our students are falling within the above average or well above average category. This looks so different again because it is just that winter assessment. And so this lighter block is a national average, just so that we have something to compare it to. This solid line right here, again, dependent upon the student's grade level, it determined basically for us what our target score, median target score would be. Up where that arrow is where we actually scored. And obviously, as you can see, our 7th grade in reading obviously outperformed the national average, but also outperformed our target for the age group. So we are very pleased with the students' results. 7th grade math, again, here is our target, which is where the national average is, and this is where our students have scored. So the 7th grade is beginning to adopt some of the same type of program and transition for interventions as the 6th grade are as well. They're not doing it every day. They are doing it, I believe, Sally, how many days? Is it once every six days in their cycle?
The Quest?
Yeah, for the 7th.
Oh, for the 7th?
Yeah.
Yes.
Once every 6 days. And, again, I think that they are seeing the results from that. In the 7th grade, we also have math and ELA labs in the 7th grade. And we're using this Ames Web data, to determine entrance into those labs, but also exits out of those labs as well. In the 8th grade, they killed the reading, Ames Web reading. Again, this is our target. This is the national average. This is where the national average was here. And the 8th grade really did an incredible job, with the Ames Web in the reading. Again, we obviously want to take a look at the individual scores, and we also want to take a look at, any of those students that fell, in this, 2 students fell within this percentile. Taking a look at those students as well and developing interventions and supports for them. And in math, again, this was our target, and this is where the 8th grade students performed, again, in math. And just like in 7th grade, we have math labs and ELA labs to be able to support the students in the areas that this type of data shows that those students need support. So what do we use it the data for besides these fabulous presentations? Really, it is to inform next steps in the instructional process for individualized and whole class instruction. If the teachers are seeing that there are, certain parts of the curriculum that students are really having difficulty with, this is going to pull it out much easier for them and really be able to then give them targeted instruction for either whole class instruction or to be able to take a small group and really focus on those areas and those skills. To inform decisions for future curriculum mapping, so our curriculum database, teachers are able to sort of do a curriculum map to determine exactly how much time is spent on certain parts of the curriculum. And, using these results, it will allow them, the next year, they'll take a look at, this year and say, what, I only really planned for 2 weeks, for these standards. But what we're seeing is that these kids really need, to be able to focus on the standard a little bit longer. So they're able to adjust the curriculum mapping so that they know for next year, we're probably gonna need to spend, an extra 2 or 3 days on this standard. Also used to determine student eligibility for ELA and math labs, as well as Quest, as I just spoke about. It's also used to help determine IEP and 504 eligibility and progress monitoring. And so, when special education teachers are, looking for, if students are making effective progress, this is just, one data point that they're able to pull from and one source to pull from to help in making decisions for students' IEP and 504 plans. And then it's also one data point to help determine placement for following year, whether it be in the middle school, it would be for math only, but also from 8th grade to 9th grade for ELA and leveling, whether it be college prep or honors. So overall, I think, Sally and I are very pleased with the students and really the teachers in, the beginning of the school year, 7th and 8th grade team learning a new system, but also the 6th grade team willing to help, obviously, their colleagues in the training with this as well. Anybody have any questions? Yes?
Diane, you shared the national data. Is this a statewide testing program? And if so, can we get comparative data in the future that shows that?
So it really is district. So it's whatever school district buys Ames Web, they take all of that information and that's how they get the national averages.
Okay. Yeah. And the second question, if you go back to the 6th grade slide for a second, just to clarify the data. So the testing in the fall and then the winter, are we testing to the same standard or are they testing to a standard that assumes they've had 3 more months of instruction?
It assumes that they have 3 more months of instruction. Yeah.
Staying on the 6th grade reading, you mentioned you were happy with the growth in the average scores, but in this one, it looks like it came at the expense of the above average. It looks like there's more kids below average now than in the fall. Whereas the other graphs look like those scores improved for math and everything else, but what's going on here?
Again, it's, as we just said, it's dependent upon, they have 3 additional, months of instruction. So it could be, again, I don't know, those students in particular that fell within that range, but it could have been the content area specifically that some of those students did struggle with. It could also, some of these things also, whether it's in 6th grade, 7th grade, or 8th grade, like this incredible growth, we had students move in from the fall to the winter, and, we could have had students that moved in that were, very good math students. And that skewed the graph a little bit. The opposite could be for, specifically for reading. But again, they take, the 6th grade takes a look at, the individual scores, and again, determines through Quest what specific skill areas they need assistance in.
Yeah, because I can see in the math, I mean, you're below average and well below.
Yeah.
Definitely improved
Right.
from fall to winter, but
Mhm.
in reading, it looks like you got worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the other thing you have to consider is how few kids we have to take these. We have a small district, so even on things like MCAS,
1 or 2 kids.
One or 2 kids can change it, but that's that's always the issue with the small district.
Yes.
I mean, you've got essentially around 100 students in 6th grade, so every percentage point helps a student, right? So you can see, for instance, total average, that's probably just one additional student in the winter and in the fall that does below average, right? Do the parents get an individualized report on this that shows how their child did? Is that part of this?
Sally can go ahead and answer.
Yeah, there are reports that can go on, yeah.
Do they go? Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they do.
Okay.
I would
But
have to check
individual
with the
teacher?
7th and 8th grade.
In what?
I'd have to check with the 7th and 8th grade since they're new, doing it new, but
Okay.
they always.
If they don't, they will.
Thanks.
So the,
Can I ask one more question, Diane?
yes.
So I know you said you went to Ames over the other,
Mhm.
to see continuity. What's the difference in the testing?
You
You know,
to be honest with you, one of the biggest differences is the amount of time that map testing takes in comparison to Ames Web. Map took, approximately 2 or 3 days away from instruction to be able to do, the assessment, where Ames Web,
It's like half of it.
yeah, if even half a day. So a significant difference in that. And that's really one of the reasons why we have done it, but also to be able to track students from the elementary school up through the middle school.
What does that difference in time relate to the accuracy and your ability to identify different gaps?
Can you repeat that again?
You said it takes your assessment time from 3 days down to half a day. What are you missing what are you not being able to identify, or what's the change in what you can identify with that drastic reduction in time? I know it gives you more time for instruction, but.
Lisa, John?
I think one of the, we actually, when we started doing this, it was mapped from 4th grade through 8th grade. So we had experience in the elementaries as well. Map, the depth of the information map gave you was overwhelming. It told you like everything. And it was counterproductive because we couldn't productively use the information with Ames Web, because it's literally like for our kids. It's a 45-minute session for math, but a 45-minute session for reading. And what it warns you of is, hey, this kid is below where we expect them to be. Go look further. So like when you see that graph where, geez, what happened to those kids who slid down from above average to just average? Which is crazy easy because that average range is 25th percentile to the 74th percentile, and then above average is like teeny tiny. So if you miss like a question or two, you slide down. But it lets us go, geez, those kids, let's dig deeper into that, because the other thing with Ames Web is that it will then let you progress monitoring. So identify poor Mr. Thompson here has some struggles with number sense fluency.
I can see that.
Not sure which numbers are which numbers, and I'm gonna practice with him every day, because he's a little slow. And every 2 weeks, we're gonna check. We're gonna do a 1-minute quick test, and that goes right into AgeSub so that teachers can build that over time. And the other nice thing about AgeSub now, K-8, is that these middle school teachers now are gonna be able to see how Ace did when he was in 2nd grade. And they'll be able to see where he was strong that we could straight through. It'll, in the long run, it gives us more actionable information.
So you're connecting those schools and historical. Okay, that's good, thank you. That answers it.
We'll do what you do the song and dance.
Thanks for coming, John. So when we started preparing for this report, we always call each other. This is what my first grade did. What did your first grade do? We were pleasantly surprised with some small theme and variations. We're in a pretty similar place. So, rule of small numbers, large numbers, it made a lot more sense for us to combine our schools' data and do a presentation at the same time. Partially because we are working on visualizing. Partially because we're working on the same things curriculum. Big change for us this year in my building is we got Joey Flournoy as our math coach, creating some consistency in math instruction. Seriously.
Right?
Yeah.
You go back to the previous slide.
Was I talking? What were you going to say? So, when you look at our report, and we're not going to go over math in this presentation because when you look at it, we're seeing some solid results in that. What we're going to talk about tonight is our focus on literacy. Because while our students are doing fairly well, we really drill down to it. You can see some of those small areas of struggle that we can really improve on. Before we get too far into it, before I pass the baton, I always want to point out that Ames Web norming, this was done pre-pandemic. They haven't updated their norms. So while we're consistently above the norm, we're not necessarily where we typically be, you remember this is compared to kids 4 years ago. So we don't really have a comparison for how we're doing compared to everybody else that taught through the pandemic. So that's just my little caveat, and I will let you pick up from.
With more caveats? Yeah. All right, so two things. One, the report that we gave you is way too in-depth and way too much information because I was off for a couple of weeks and was bored. So please feel free at the end of this to any questions you have about other stuff you saw in there. That's fine. I'm going to do kindergarten through grade 2. Ace is going to talk about grades 3 through 5 in literacy because that's, I think, where our focus has been all year. Math is ruthlessly cumulative. They'll catch up. But there are some things in reading that if you don't get it by 2nd grade, there are problems. And so we're hyper-focused on phonics and phonemic awareness, and that's what we're going to talk about in these next few slides. So this is kindergarten. Kindergarten, this is what the report looks like that we got. It's a skills report. And you can see we assess at kindergarten in a lot of different things. And this looks way better on my screen than it does up here. But we look at a lot of subsets of information to see where kids are. Do they know how to hold the book? Do they recognize letters? Do they understand letter sounds? And then we get a breakout, kind of like what Diane and Sally were showing you in terms of above average, et cetera, et cetera. But in kindergarten, the two things that we focus on, one is letter naming fluency, which is here, and then letter word sound fluency. So do they know what sound S makes? Can they say the word sat? These are quick 1-minute tests that we give to every child 3 times a year. And you can see that the bottom line here, this is the graph, well above average, average. Our percentile scores are in the 40s. And Mr. Thompson and I have a problem with that because what we like is to always be above the norm. We want to be the Lake Wobegon of education, always above average. And we're not there. And you can see on this side, they give you an early literacy composite score. And our district composite score is 39. And I don't think either of us were super surprised by it. It's been a tough couple of years. And parents have been working with their kids who are home. It's not a normal thing. I'm confident that that will continue to grow. It's an improvement over our fall school, which was 24. And the teachers are working super hard with this. We've also implemented some Faqs and academic awareness programs this year, which will help us with this going forward. So this is first grade. And it's the grade that we talk about the most. These are the kids who last year did not get the kind of instruction that you would want. It was hybrid learning. They were in 2 days a week. God bless the parents who tried to help their kids read. Mr. Toppman, you can probably relate. So this is our challenge group. And again, you see that in first grade, there are 4 tests that they do. One is auditory vocabulary, which looks at, do kids understand words when they don't have to read them? Nonsense word fluency, where the letters are right, but they don't make any sense. Can kids sound out words where they have no cue? Oral reading fluency and word reading fluency. I'm going to stop just for a second so we can kind of go into, in first grade, they really only look at 2 things, oral reading fluency, and that makes up the composite score. Oral reading fluency is what we're going to talk about from now on, because when kids read out loud, what happens is that they have to combine all those other skills. They got to understand the letters and the sound. They got to be able to recognize words without sounding it out. The more you have to think about what you're reading, the slower you read. And so you can see our oral reading fluency percentile is 46, and that's the same thing as our early composite score. And again, that's not where we want our kids to be. I think that all things considered, again, this is an increase over the fall score. All things being considered, we're on the right track. But school committee, you guys deserve to know kind of what's going on there. The other thing we start talking about in first grade are Lexile scores. AimsWeb gives us, if you do the oral reading fluency test, a Lexile score. A Lexile score is a number that indicates the complexity of reading material. So the higher the number, the more complex the reading material is. And what some researchers did is they took like 1 million results from AimsWeb and they normed them so that you could look at a Lexile score of 200 and you could say for first graders, that's at the 53rd percentile. Again, we wanted to look at how many kids met or exceeded the winter Lexile expectation at the 50th percentile. In first grade, it's a third of 38%. 16% are like within a year, but we've got, again, in this grade, the grade that we're most concerned about, 47% are more than a year behind. Most of those kids are scoring as beginner readers. That's our focus group. We're putting a ton of energy into that. We're putting a ton of resources into that, and it continues to improve. But this is where we are right now. Second grade. Again, you see there are 3 things. All 3 of these things now, oral reading fluency, reading comprehension, and vocabulary, are combined in a weighted fashion to give you the reading composite score. And you can see here, I mentioned this in my report, second grade rocked it. Oral reading fluency, 60th percentile. Reading comprehension, 66. Vocabulary, 83rd percentile. Those are great. The overall percentile is 68. And for those of you, I'm sure you found my report riveting and read every word. I commented, I'm not really sure why that happened. While I was talking to some second grade teachers, what they pointed out, I think I was sharing this with you, Carol, is that this group of kids, our second graders in both schools, the first group of kids to have systematic, explicit phonics instruction in both kindergarten and first grade. So they're better prepared, and we're starting to see those results. That's why we're less about, is he blocking my video? So when you look at our Lexile results, kids who've never exceeded that second grade expectation, 50th percentile, 64%, plus 2 kids in 3. And more than a year behind, just 8%, which statistically is kind of what you would expect. There are some kids who are always going to struggle, kids who need specialized services. This is what we want for everybody. So that's kindergarten through grade 2. Thompson? I'll stand in front of them now. All right. Okay.
This is my good side.
There are no good sides.
So interesting, we pick up the oral reading fluency thread throughout. And so second grade, where we see the greatest strength there, when we get into third grade, they did not have the benefit of foundations instruction before that. We were strictly sticking with Boylston, with Wonders rather. So you see where over here, this all looks pretty good, and I can always brag about our reading comprehension. Because up until now, when we got to the upper grades, we really focused on, are they understanding what they're reading? But as we've dug deeper into this, we realized that, as they get into older grades, the fluency is going to catch up. Yes, at the lower grades, that we've given them the skills they can compensate if they can't read really, really quickly. But eventually, that's gonna become a struggle for them. So here you look again, we're converting it to a Lexile score. And we're pretty good. Again, I want you to hold on to this number because as we go up, these numbers change a little bit. But we are looking at 45% are at or above Lexile according to the as well. When we get to grade 4, you see oral reading fluency number keeps coming down a little bit, and the number of students that are struggling keep rising a little bit. And you can see that reflected in the Lexile scores. This is not all doom and gloom. And I also want you to know that we're doing things for these kids in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. We're not going back and teaching foundations. We have read naturally, we have different reading passages that we're doing. These are tier 2 interventions and tier 1 interventions that we're providing. But the work that we're doing in K1 to 2, the work that we're doing with integrity foundations, that's going to impact this in the long run. We're not going to need as much intervention moving forward. And similarly in grade 5, this is where I think it's highlighted the most, where we have the most number of students that are below on the left side. So we have those students in our RTI process. We're using Read Naturally and other programs like that. We're working on that. They're comprehending, but we recognize that this is going to be a problem moving down the road. I think the other reason to bring this up and talk about this now is because you voted on the budget at the last meeting that I came to. And one of the things that we were talking about was the need for a literacy coach. They think this is an area that a literacy coach can help strengthen and improve the work that we're already doing. We are seeing gains from the fall to the winter, but we want to see more because we want our kids coming up to Hunter ready, reading fluently as well as comprehending everything there, and prepared for future success. We will take any other questions. Yes.
So you were talking about foundations. Is that a new program that our district?
It's new to us. We rolled it out in kindergarten 2 years ago, right? Just pre-pandemic, and so.
And I know what it is because of my kids, but I didn't realize that it was new to our district. I just thought it was something that everybody was doing.
No, yeah, it's pretty. It should. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. I think it works. I think it's great. My daughter in preschool already knows all the letters because of foundations, not because of me. But I didn't realize that it was new.
And it's already paying dividends when you look at that in the 2nd grade.
Is it something that you can use in 5th, or it's because it's so basic? Is there like a more advanced part of that concept? I don't know that you could apply to like those older grades.
So if we do it right, when they're in 3rd grade, they have all the skills. We do have other, foundations as part of Wilson, so we have that as Wilson as an intervention. So if kids have received 3 years of it and they're not progressing, we have that tier 2, tier 3 intervention for it. But if we do our job right, if we implement it well, and we do it, they shouldn't need it.
If you're in 4th and 5th grade and still struggling with sounding out words, there are other problems. It's not lack of instruction, it's going to be more of a reading issue.
Gotcha. Yeah.
You hit on the budget, Ace, at the end. And I guess the question for you, did you bring this data when you had your meetings with the towns, or do you explain it to them like this, like the low scores, the poor?
We didn't have this data.
You didn't have it yet?
Can we go back in time? I didn't think I asked
Because I
that.
mean,
But we have this in the budget. We have the coach in the budget.
The coach is in the budget.
yeah, those are, but I know there's some debate and back and forth on the budget with the towns, as we were talking.
It is
Are you
essential.
gonna maybe plan to tell them, like, look, we struggled because of COVID, the scores are now showing it?
Well, you know, even if they were at the 90%, a literacy coach keeps you there. You know, so there's always a need for someone whose focus is just on the literacy part and being in the classroom and working with teachers. Because they lose, you know, they lose focus, there's somebody there. So whether you're at the 20th percentile, the 80th percentile, a literacy coach is always going to be there. If you're up high, they'll help keep you there. So.
One of the challenges with the work that ACE and I are doing right now is, you know, we're nice guys and people like us, but we're not classroom teachers. What teachers look for is somebody who has done the work, stood in the room, they've done the hard stuff. Because there's that level of respect that, you know, teachers accord each other. And that's one of the essential reasons. So why Joe is really so successful. He's taught for years. He's brilliant.
I guess I wonder if there's enough time in the school day to improve the results we've seen, as you've shown, given other demands on teachers' time and other things that children need to learn. To that point, I have two questions. Do we expect that some of these first graders in particular will be kept back in order to get them caught up? My second question is, do we offer any after-school ELA programs that help extend our instructional time so that some of those students would have an option of continuing to learn beyond 3 o'clock?
Good questions. Let me start with the second one. We don't currently have any after-school programs. My experience with them, especially in the lower grades, is kids are nuts by the end of the day, and so it's not necessarily great use of time. What I can say is we've prioritized our literacy blocks of the day. So we try to make sure we maximize those, and we try to stay away from those, trying not to schedule assemblies and different special events during that. I think, and I'll let John speak, with the implementation of these programs that we've been doing, I think that's going to go a long way into addressing and closing that gap.
Yeah, you're right. Part of the challenge is that phonics instruction is most powerful with our youngest kids. We're the quickest to get tired. And just to go back to the part of the question, retention, the results of retention are almost universally awful. And it doesn't really help we're going to have to, with that group of children, actually K-1, keep redoubling our efforts around instruction. But to do the same thing over, the social consequences are just huge.
Yeah. So that means the other question I would have into that point about them being tired at 3 o'clock, I get. If we looked at, should we consider opportunities to offer instruction in the summer for some of those children who might benefit from continued ELA instruction post-June?
It was a tough sell last year. We did summer work last year. And ACE is a huge proponent of this. And but it was hard to get people to commit.
Yeah.
But if I saw the score for my kid and saw that they're behind, probably gonna have a different reaction, because I think we got invited to the summer program with an incoming kindergartner. I had no reason to put him into that, take him out to camp he was in, right? But if I instead saw that, hey, he's behind, or there's an opportunity here, and there's a program I can enroll him in, even if I have to pay a fee for that program, I think that would be something a lot of families would consider if it was available. And certainly, whether district-wide or remote, there's probably things we can look at that maybe don't even have to have in person sometimes.
Yes, and I just want to let you know, we did set aside funding for our Tier 3 grant for this purpose. We wanted to see what the results were through the year, and that is something that we are considering and we can consider for the summer for those students. So in fact, we were just talking about it recently. Ace and John, are there students that we would want to target or grade levels in particular? So I think the results of the data they're showing, so perhaps their target audience is those first and second grade students.
Yeah, I think the need is clearer now than it was last
that's what
last
it
spring.
is.
And anticipated question, yes, every time we do end-to-end testing at the elementary level, we send the reports on fall, winter, and spring.
We were really surprised. Last year, we got a grant for the Acceleration Academy, and it was for the elementary schools, and also we offered for the middle school, but we really didn't get any participants. So we put the funding that we had received, we got so many students coming into kindergarten. Not so much for the academics, for that program, to come in to do the academic work, for the social emotional piece of it, just fun and getting the experience of being in school. We had one class set aside for kindergarten. We ended up with 3 classrooms worth of students coming in for that. And a week is such a short time, you know, a half day, weeks, but this is something we can certainly do and have been actually starting to talk about.
I think too, this is an important piece too, removing the masks is huge. So I think the kids are gonna be, all right. I mean, I think this first grade group is the hybrid group. And then I got them back with the masks and teachers trying to teach them phonics. It's very, very, very difficult for those teachers. So I think that the mask's gone, we're gonna see these kids back. We're gonna think about it.
And also, the thinking on this has changed over the past few years. When we, March 20, we left school, the conferences that I attended that NWPA sponsored was the National Assessment Organization, they create the MAP test. It's a national group and the consultants they hired will tell districts across the country that the way you do this is in the beginning of the year, you assess students, you see what the gaps are, and then you focus on those areas. But that's because it was from March to September. As we extended into the year and then 2 years, the thinking on how to catch students up has completely changed. They're not recommended to doing it because so many kids have lost so much that the current thinking on how to catch students up is just what they're doing. They're doing it within the context of the standards they're working on. So if they see a gap in the standard, if they're in 4th grade and they see a gap in the 3rd grade standard, they teach it in 4th grade. They attack it that way. So, and that has changed. There's no question that students have lost something. But that's when we decided our focus was putting on personnel and not the programs because we have those. That's part of the reason is that academic piece of catching up. Then that's what we could have taken that ELA person, that Lucy person, and put it in next year. And that's why we kept it in this year. So.
Just one last, or 2 last things for you guys. Do you have the information on how does this year's grade 1 that you focused on? I think it was like 63% are from a year to more than a year. Do you have comparisons to first grades pre-COVID where they usually stand?
First grade was harder to do because there's nothing before first grade. We do.
I mean, like 2018 first graders. How does that?
I get that. Yeah.
What? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then, kind of to Julie's point, I mean, we got our own individual scores, and this was months ago, right? 2 months ago or so. What happened? I've noticed in the past week plus at home, reading is like through the roof compared to what it was in February. So I agree with you. I think it'll come around, but I don't envy the work you do.
Good taste of work. They could be the best first grade teachers in Berlin.
Lori, if I could just continue on with my report, because I just have 2 more things.
Wait, I was still excited.
Difficult to continue. So we have, Matt McCarl, the athletic director, and myself wanted to bring forward a school broadcast program. And this is NFHS. And it's powered by a company called PlayOn. Most of the schools in the Mid-Wachusett League and really most of the schools across the state have a school broadcasting program. It really came to the forefront here at Tohoto during COVID, when fans were not allowed in games. And we basically had to beg parents and other volunteers to be able to videotape basketball games last year so family and friends could view it. And so Matt reached out to NFHS and they have provided us with a contract. And what this contract basically states is that there is no cost to the school. The company provides all of the camera, they provide the maintenance, They work with our technology department for the wiring, et cetera. And basically, it would be a 5-year contract. This is why it's been brought forward to all of you, because any contract over 3 years has to be brought forward to the school committee. And the cost basically is 10%. There's a subscription, so if parents or grandparents or students, other family members, want to watch, can't come to the game but want to watch, they can get a subscription. And 10% of the proceeds of the subscriptions comes back to Tohoto, comes back to the school as well. We can also use this service for videotaping graduation inside in the gymnasium as well. We are in talks, but this will be for down the road to try to get cameras out at the softball field hockey fields, as well as the baseball and soccer fields. But, I think it's one thing that COVID did is it really opened our eyes up to, the technology and the power of, technology and being able to get, these games and, these broadcasts out to parents and grandparents and anybody really, any relative across the United States. They would be able to watch their loved ones play as well. And so, I think it would be really beneficial to the school to be able to go forth. I believe, I know you're gonna ask me this, and I can't think of it off the top of my head. Jeff, I don't know if you remember, but I think the cost I think it's like $10 a month. It's a pretty minimal cost. I mean, I think you have to pay $5 to get into a basketball game or one game. So, so I think it would be definitely worth, Tohoto looking into as well. There also is a feature whereas, oftentimes we have somebody videotaping for the coaches to do replays with the teams. This would be available to coaches as well. We would just contact the company and say, hey, listen, we need the game tape from, March 8th. Can you send that to us? And they send that information to us as well.
And we've sent the contract to our legal counsel to vet it, and so he looked at it. He had not concerns, but just a few questions that I passed on to Diane, and it was just things about, the schedules have to be to the company within a certain amount of days, things like that. And then really the only thing we're responsible for is the infrastructure. We have the technology department sort of rigged up a system in there for games, but we would run a dedicated line in there, which cost, I talked to technology director, so that's about $1,000, but that's it, which would come out of technology budget. So that's really the only cost for us. And then just sending parents information. There's audio with that, right? There's
Yes.
audio.
Yeah.
So it's not the video that's the privacy issue, it's the audio. It's the RICO statute, wiretapping laws. Make sure we tell people. But that's it. And we've done all that stuff for Zoom when we started, so we got that covered. But other than that, there wasn't anything in the contract that was going to be a legal issue as far as West was concerned. So
So you've already got the rig set up? Is this something?
just the wiring, they'll come in and they have the components. We put something in there temporarily because they were taping games, but we would want to run like a dedicated line. It's not like sort of makeshift.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. What have you been doing so far? And can we not just do something ourselves? It's cheaper.
So basically, it's getting somebody to stand there with a tripod and a camera and do this.
So that's what they'll come and do?
Oh, no, these are actually mounted cameras that will, we give them the game schedule. And basically, they do all of the filming for us using the cameras that they had mounted. A lot of schools use Huddle, which is a very similar company, and they use it for their football.
Is this company, you mentioned it's free to us, and the schools will get a 10% of whatever the subscription is. Is the company allowed to do anything with that video? Are they selling ads on the video or anything like that?
So, any ads, so we could, we don't have to, but we could sell ads. And, like if you have a company and you want to advertise, during our Tohoto basketball games, you would be, required to pay a fee. We get a certain percentage of the fee and then the company gets the other percentage. They do not put any of their, any other type of, commercials or anything on, our video games.
Is that in line? So you said the legal Russ looked at that, and that's in line with the policies and all that?
Yeah, he didn't have any real legal concerns. Just, like, if you're able to meet the commitments that they expect, then it's fine, so.
So what if you can't meet the commitments? Like, I'm looking at one of them, I think it's from legal, the school must provide game schedules 60 days prior to the start of the sports seasons. I haven't.
Believe it or not, our fall sports schedules, the deadlines for the MIAA, we have to make those schedules in the spring of the year. So Matt Picaro right now is working on fall schedules.
Okay, so you do,
Yeah.
60 days.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good, that's good. And then, so everything else that's on there, if we get out of it early, it's $2,500 early termination fee. That's fine. My only thing would be, I would, and if you say the other Wachusett schools are doing it, if it, is it glitchy, does it work, is it something that's well reviewed with these other schools before you get into a 5-year contract with them?
Yeah, a lot of other schools have had it for years.
Okay.
We're one of just a handful of Wachusett schools that don't have any form of broadcasting of games.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I love the idea of the broadcasting of games. I think that's great.
I know a lot of people, especially with COVID, even though we don't have to wear masks, we won't come. Grandparents, we just watch the game from their house now. So
Yeah.
that's a big advantage.
No, I agree with you, Jeff. I just want to make sure that if they're paying for, for it, wait, what?
That's not good just for your cable TV industry.
Right, you know what I mean? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So that can be insured. That's
Just a
great.
privacy question, how do these cameras go on and off? Are they always on and streaming, or is it?
No, so that's why we have to provide the schedules, including the times. So, it turns on and, in game time, when we say it turns on and when it turns off. So, that's why they require, because they need to make sure that, they have the manpower to be able to, provide, all of the live broadcasting. And so they need to schedule that far in advance to be able to put it into their systems so that, the cameras are turning on and turning off.
And then coaches can easily, if they want to review films with their athletes, do that.
Yeah, so all that they do is they have, the athletic director, they say to the athletic director, hey, I want a copy of that. Can we get a copy? And he sends the information and they send it.
That's awesome.
Is there any, play-by-play commentary, and are you doing it for outdoor sports as well?
There's no play-by-play commentary. It's just basically video.
It's just video.
Video.
Whatever you can hear on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you doing it for outdoor sports too?
So right now we're focusing on, indoor, the, outdoor for the field hockey and softball and for the soccer and, baseball and track and field. There would be, I would think, a larger cost associated with that, because of the internet out in, it'd be easier there than out there.
So the contract just covers the indoor sports?
Just covers the gymnasium. Not only the sports, but we could also, if we wanted to, again, broadcast graduation. Typically we do it, Joe Belay, and it's telecom, they videotape graduation, and then they, upload it, they do it. So it could actually be live. So if you have a relative in California, they can watch your graduation.
Yeah, that's great.
Did you have something else, Diane?
School choice recommendations. So the, for the 2022-2023 school year, I am making a recommendation that our incoming sixth grade is pretty small. It's a small group for both Berlin and Boylston. Is that right, that Berlin had more students in the fifth grade than?
We are slowly but surely overtaking Boylston.
Wow. It's phenomenal.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that laughed as you said that.
So because it's a small group and there is, you know, I clearly can't count them off by one, but I'm recommending 7 school choice students for the incoming sixth grade. That would be a total of, an additional 8 students. So that would be, bring that class size to 76. Not making any recommendations for grades 7 and 8. Incoming 9th grade, recommending 5 additional school choice students. And again, this is, you know, it's always very tricky to tell with incoming 9th grade. We do have, you know, we have, as you know, the vocational schools are doing their enrollment quite different, beginning with next year's grade. And so I believe that our school choice slot numbers for Assabet are at 7. And, you know, that is significantly lower than historically they've accepted for Berlin and Boylston in the past. And then you add, you know, additionally, currently we have, you know, approximately 3 students who have put forth, you know, recommendations for, or asked for recommendations for private schools. So we're looking at those numbers. So I believe that, you know, losing about 10 students is probably what we're gonna end up seeing. But again, it really is, who knows at that. And then, so with the 5 additional, we would look at an incoming grade 9 class of 86 students. And then not recommending any other school choice for grades 10, 11, and 12 next year. So 8 for grade 6 and 5 for grade 9.
Question, so as I think to the budget and some of the placements that have cost us a lot of money, right? When we accept school choice students in the district, is there a risk that they also then require a placement in other district that would then be our financial burden to cover?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. It's by law, it's a school committee member does it actually, so.
Now, when you first do your school choice, if you find that, you know, when we ask for the records after we have accepted them, initially, if you find that you do not have the services or the capability to, you know, provide what that particular student needs, you can at that point say, you know, that we cannot accept them because we don't have, you know, the program in place for them. However, once they come in, let's say a year later, they need, you know, an out-of-district placement, we own them.
Can I ask a question? So the kids that are coming in 6th grade, I see this, the 8 recommended. Do we know if any of those 8 are in the collaborative for Assabet? Like, do they, so let's say they come from a town that's in the Assabet collaborative, and then they go off to Assabet. We're now responsible for paying their tuition, correct? Over at Assabet?
Yeah.
if they did middle school at Tohoto,
Yeah,
Yeah, they want to go to Assabet.
yeah, if they go to Assabet,
we're not responsible, it's the town. So basically, if, it's where they reside, so let's say that we have, and this has happened, like, we have students who are from Clinton, and they're currently in the 8th grade. They have applied to Assabet. Clinton, I believe, is not in the collaborative. So it goes by their home district. So they would be put in that second tier of admission.
I guess the question though is if they get into Assabet as a ninth grader, are we paying the cost of their Assabet placement?
No, the town is, their hometown,
Let me pay.
their town of residence.
even if they went through 6, 7, and 8 at
Correct.
Tohoto,
It's their residence.
still their resident town.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, quite honestly.
Right.
But Assabet can charge, how much does it cost to place someone at Assabet? What does it cost to place someone at Assabet?
Is it like 17,000 for Assabet? Okay, because
6, 17, 18, yeah.
They can charge 780, but you only charge 5.
We only get
Oh, we get 5.
five.
Doesn't sound fair.
Well, I mean, we get 5, and even if you forget about that, and our per pupil expenditure is 16, so.
Great business model.
I don't really get why school choice is a huge thing.
And so how do you get these numbers, school choice numbers? I don't know, that's what I'm asking.
How do I determine them?
Yes.
So we like to keep the numbers, right around 90.
Okay.
So that, and we always get students who, move in as well, so we always leave a little bit of breathing room. We had, was it one group that we had like 90, we started the school year with, I think, about 90 or 91, and we ended the school year with like 96 or 97. And that, can make a significant impact, so we leave, a little breathing room. Because it really is just meant to fill in, extra seats.
How much demand do you expect for the 5 students in ninth grade, for example? How many applicants would you typically expect to see for ninth grade?
So, today we just had 2 calls. I'm not sure what grades they were, but we're getting our applications in. But the thing is that they can, they have a certain deadline once we accept them, to say, yes, I want to go. But then 2 days before school starts, they can be like, no, thank you.
The check.
And then Mr. Thompson said, well, let's hope that we get more jacks. Right, because that would be great.
I'll work on it.
And so then what, yeah, so then what we also do, especially if it's very, if it's within the first couple of weeks, we will, if anybody was on the wait list was not chosen, we will contact them and say that there is an opening, but, once school starts and we're with a month or 2 and somebody gives me a call and says, hey, I'm like,
What's the significance of 90?
because in the middle school especially, we have 4 sections. We have 4 sections of in each core content area, so 4 classes. So it just keeps the numbers right around 20, anywhere from 20 to 22 in each class.
So am I understanding it correctly then, like Adam said, these are costing us an extra 11,000 per kid?
No.
Because it's a 16,000 expenditure, we get 5 in for them.
Jeff just said it costs $16,000 to educate a child in our district.
Yeah.
That's the average cost.
But when you're talking about school choice, like that number is, it's basically filling an empty seat.
Gotcha.
We're not hiring more teachers to educate these school choice kids. we're basically filling a seat and getting $5,000.
So they lower, that probably lowers our per pupil cost if we take that into consideration.
If you average everything out, yes.
But you know, when you take the school choice students and you get to offset the budget with that money. But, the 16,000 sort of baked into teacher salaries and material costs and all of that.
Yeah.
I understand to the high school level more than I understand to the elementary school level, so we talk about that, I'll have some questions, but I get the high school level, the sections and the way those things are all set up, that it can make a lot of sense to have balanced classes across all the years. I get that.
Do we have to do school choice?
No, you vote on it, you vote on it, and you vote on it each year. You do not, you don't have to do school choice. Chrissy, when is that vote? Don't they do it in April? April?
Oh, okay.
But just point of order, it's on the first read tonight.
I do, if I could just add, I do have to say historically, school choice has added some very nice diversity
Oh, good.
to our district that hasn't always been there.
Thank you, Diane. Any other questions? That was great, thank you. Really thorough. Great.
Okay, so, the negotiation subcommittee, the update on that is that we're meeting on Tuesday, March 22nd.
They're gonna do school choice.
I'm sorry, I skipped right over you, because I was looking later on.
You guys, yeah,
My bad.
So- We have those school choice.
I had,
You have those school choice.
I had school choice.
So, in Boylston, I am recommending, we add 3 more seats into, 3rd grade, 1 in 4th, and 2 in 5th.
Is how many classes do you have in those 3 years?
So I will have, next year I will have 3 thirds, 2 fourths, and 3 fifths.
3 thirds. So your 4th grade class size becomes 23 at 46 students if you add 1 in. Whereas both 3rd and 5th will be in the high teens. I have trouble with that personally when it comes to school choice. I get to the high school level, I get less to the elementary school level. Especially in a school that is somewhat underfunded across the district. If you look at the per pupil expenditure for PBS compared to PMS, I struggle to see why we should add that, but I'd love to hear why.
Because my budget relies so heavily on the money that we're spending out of school choice. I mean, we've been offering, and which Bob was here, because he can speak far more eloquently to it. But the last few years, to offset the budget, we've been spending more out of school choice than we've been taking in, especially the last few years during the pandemic. I didn't take any in because I was concerned about what fluctuation would do, especially if we're moving into that higher. I think there are benefits to Diane's point about adding diversity. We've had quite a few really wonderful students join, but the bottom line is to do it because my budget is so tight that if I can fit a couple of kids into a couple of seats, it helps offset the deficit.
So if your budget was $30,000 more, you wouldn't ask for the 6 school choice we had.
So I said, well, because 30,000 is not gonna get me a whole lot. It gets, but probably ask for another thing.
Yeah, no, I get it. And you chose those grades because that's where you feel like you at least have some wiggle room?
Yep, yeah, the 4th grade was a tight call. We brought that one up. I felt like adding one wasn't gonna overdo it. I tend not to make recommendations in the lower grades compared to the 1st grade, because I see the most fluctuation in those grades. So I feel like we get the most kids coming and going in there, so it's, I don't want to set myself up for some changes.
That makes sense.
Anyone else?
John, looking at your 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade classes, which have, 20, how many classes do you have in those grades?
2 in each grade,
2 in each grade, thank you. So you're in the mid-teens,
which is the sweet spot for that building.
for a classroom.
The school, Berlin Memorial, is, and you might remember from the tour, everything is smaller. The town was very determined when they built the building that they never had big classes. So they the closet is like 4 feet by 6 feet. The classrooms are smaller than typical. We give 15 or 16 kids, especially the older kids,
Everything's smaller for people expenditure.
Exactly. Well, because it's mathematical, right? The cost is things. But we have fewer kids to divide by. And we're growing now. You know, my kindergarten right now is up to 36. That would be big K classes for us.
Okay.
Okay, the negotiation subcommittee, we are meeting on Tuesday, March 22nd for our first negotiation meeting with the BBEA. Anything you want to add, Megan?
Nope. Give me an update after, right?
The elections subcommittee, do you guys have any updates?
I think, I mean, 23rd, correct?
Yeah, we have a meeting later this month. The paperwork has been sent into the state, so they should know that we have some vacancies coming up. So it will be the first election for the regional districts committee.
I guess we're moving on to business items. At this time, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the school broadcast program 5-year contract. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Discussion?
This is all good with legal? Everything's good?
Yep, except for the one email that Julie was just reading.
Yeah, that email was in the drive, did you see it?
I saw it, so that's still in there? Or that's still?
No, that was their response, I think.
Russ approved of the,
Yeah,
Everything's
all you
good.
had was those 6 or 7 concerns. That was
And
it.
that's all good?
all in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. The motion to approve the school broadcast program 5-year contract passes. I would like to have a motion to appoint a member of the committee to, as the coordinator to the Marion Hoffman Award.
I'll move to appoint, nominate Julie. Yours.
So Julie, any discussion?
Beautiful.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. The motion to appoint Julie as the coordinator of the Marion Hoffman Award passes. The 2022-23 calendar, we have a first read. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
I have one really quick comment. This is gonna sound insane. But for Professional Development Day, and I see why it was done, Professional Development Day, and then with all the long weekend. Would the school ever consider doing a Professional Development Day the day after Halloween? I'm only asking that because I know for the elementary, it's probably not a big deal for the kids. Maybe it is, I don't know. I keep my kids home after every Halloween.
That's so interesting.
They're just not in good standing.
I wasn't here. I went to school that day.
What?
Over here to catch up in school.
I
Kids
just
are
think
sick
this
today
should,
after
it's just,
Halloween every year.
it's just, it's a tough, I think, environment for a teacher. I'm just talking, that was the only thing I saw.
That's a good idea, Julie.
That, actually, we've been sick a lot the day after Halloween, because, yeah, out late, eating a lot of junk. I don't know. Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I wouldn't oppose it, but I don't know if they have this strategically placed somewhere. Oh, you mean instead of like Friday?
Or I don't know, maybe just
Or-
not even this year, but just put it on, just store it.
Because next thing you know, they're just you.
I think it's a good idea.
You voted.
But who made it? Who did this?
Christie.
All those things.
I'll remember that.
You did a great job, Kristen.
You sure did, it's awesome.
Adam?
I have a different concern about the calendar, and it's not any way Christie related to you putting together.
Last year.
I question the virtue of half days. And I especially question the virtue of half days coming out of 2 years where we already lost so much classroom time. So I look at this calendar and I see in particular half days of professional development on September 14th, which is a random Wednesday in the middle of the month after the third week of school, and the same thing in the middle of January. So I look at this and I ask whether we can look at this and consider a different approach to the professional development to perhaps limit the number of half days we have on the calendar in order to maximize the number of hours we have in the classroom. Those two are the ones that stand out to me more than any. I also look at the half days for parent-teacher conferences, both at Tohoto and at the elementary schools, and I wonder whether or not the half day of sending the kids to school in the morning could instead be professional development. But I feel that half days are a challenge for parents, for students, and in particular, given that we didn't have any school at the end of 2020 and only were in school 2 days a week in most of 2021, I really have a concern with continuing to include half days of calendar.
Your suggestion, we suggest that we combine the 2 half days and then put it after Halloween.
That would be fine. That would be fine. Make November 1st a regular day and get rid of those 2 half days. That would be a great option.
Yeah, no kidding.
I mean, the only question I have, I guess, is probably a Tara question. Are these half days selected because there is professional development available statewide for participating in? Or are we,
No, this comes from years past of changing these kinds of dates for PD and arranging them in a number of different ways. And so we try to do the half days historically because we get to count those as teaching days in the calendar for DESI.
but that's not great for students. I guess it's great for potentially teachers, but I think for students, I prefer 180 full days in school. Or as close to 180 days as we can have of students in school from 8 to 3.
Right, so we can do that, I mean, we can combine those days, it impacts, again, the teaching days, the number of teaching days we have in school, we can change that. I mean, if that's something that the school committee is interested in doing, we can do that. But I think we also have, I don't know if this affects the negotiations with teachers as well, so I think that's something we have to negotiate.
Yeah, I'm not saying don't include PD, I'm not saying, I'm just suggesting.
No, but that's why, Adam, and so there's no, it doesn't have to do with anything as far as connected to state trainings that are taking place on those days. And it's just a preference that happens through the years. School committees and teachers, I would say more so school committees. And then there was a whole group of school committee members who did not want half days. So we eliminated those, even for holidays, like before the holidays.
Yeah, I think going before Thanksgiving always made sense. Even taking the 23rd off this year makes a lot of sense.
We had that, at one point, we had that day off.
Yeah.
Full day off. So we're always looking at these, changing these dates around, there's a couple of them on the calendar. I don't know how much you want to speak to that.
I'd be interested in whether
I hear what you're saying, but I disagree. I mean, I think I'm all about balance in life, and I think kids, I remember being a kid and looking forward to the half day, because, and again, this is a very one-sided view. Meet up at the playground with the friends, go home, have lunch, and it's just like kind of a fun day, and then, the teachers get to do their PD stuff. Also, I don't know if this is a thing or not, I remember when I was a kid, again, they would place days on the calendar, try to keep the schools closed at certain times. Okay, we're getting a lot of germs in here, or we've been going like 3 or 4 weeks straight. They need something to break it up. I don't know if that's what goes into this rationale or not. I always thought it was, but I don't have a problem with them. But I do see what you're saying, how there's probably a huge group of parents that's just a big inconvenience for.
The first 3 weeks of January there's no full days. The first 3 weeks of January 2023. No full weeks, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but then there's 1, 2, 3, there's 4 straight weeks with no breaks until February.
Well, we also try to, when you plan days, you try to plan them so that you do, besides the kids having fun days, you try to plan them so that teachers do some professional development. and then they put it into action, and then they come back sometime later, whether it be next month or so, and then they kind of revisit that. So that's really the whole idea. And that's part of the reason why most PDDs, we try to front load so that at the beginning of the year. And so by having half days, you can sort of stretch it out so they always have a day to get back together, talk about what they implemented based on what they did at the last PD day. At least in theory, that's how it goes. So you have the PD day, you implement it, and then you come back and discuss it. So it's just not like a one and done. So that's why you try to spread it out like that. That's the theory behind it. And again, that's why you try to front load professional development so that it, it's all at the beginning, they can actually use it.
So my suggestion would then be to consider, as this comes back to us, taking the half day on September 14th and the half day on January 11th, instead of having the full professional development day on November 1st, which would then give Julie her day every other week.
And the teachers.
But then you can't do professional development on Friday, though. You can't have one on the 1st and a half day on Thursday, the 3rd, and a full day off on Friday. That would be, so you'd have to redo the whole calendar.
My main point is that.
I hear what you're saying.
Maximize the number of hours students are in school, especially given what's happened in the last 2 years, in the data we presented with tonight.
The other thing I want to mention, to tag on to what Jeff was just talking about, we're also looking at, teachers have asked also to have half days, so they have them more frequently through the different months. There are some districts that have a half days once a month, or even some districts still have them once a week. And so, that has all been talked about in the past, and I think this was also a way to address giving teachers more professional development time to work together without compromising students in school during those days and spreading it out, so we have leveraged a couple more PD times for them, although it's not a full day for them, it still gives them 2 hours worth of time to work together, or on trainings or whatever we're planning to do. It adds us 2 months time periods, but.
So you're saying these half days count as a full day of teaching the kids?
Yeah.
So I'd be okay having more half days, so long as that other half gets made up somewhere in the instruction.
That's one, right.
Like to Adam's point, based on what we saw tonight, I mean, you need more school, not less school.
Yeah. I mean, you could break.
Whether it
this down
counts
into
on-
half days.
Whether it counts on an accountant's ledger at DC that you got X number of hours or not, kids need to be in school.
So when we have full PD days, you're not in school.
Yeah.
So-
But that doesn't count as a learning day.
Right.
So these half-day PD days, you're getting 8 hours counting towards your instruction, but you're only getting 4 hours of actual instruction. That's, like you said,
But by having 4 half days, you're losing.
I mean, that's shortchanging the kids, it's shortchanging the taxpayers, it's shortchanging everything. I haven't thought about it like that, but I'm glad you brought it up.
Well, sometimes you're just visiting a small topic, and then, it's a half day of work, and then you go put it into action, and then it's just wasted time sometimes on a full day too, so.
Yeah.
There is a need for half days, there is a place for them. I would say not an entire calendar, but there's a place for half days, they do have good use, and, you can't measure everything by the minute, the quality of what you get sometimes is.
Which is
more important
balanced.
than time.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know that what we saw tonight means kids need more hours in the classroom. I think to Julie's point, as we start to normalize our schools, hopefully that's what kids need more so than just physically being in the classroom more hours.
Can I just bring up one thing? We'll take a look at this because we're still looking at some of the requests from the teachers. One of the things that came up from the teachers is Good Friday. That was a day that I believe we historically had off, and one of the committees when I was here asked that it not be a day off. Again, it gets made up at the end. If it's a day off, it gets made up at the end. Teachers have asked that it be a day off again. That's what we get.
When is Good Friday, the date? Yes.
7, April 7. I believe that's it, right, Christie? You put the calendar date
Yes.
on.
Okay,
You did such a great job. It's at 7. Yeah.
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, I wondered that too, why I made school.
And they can probably speak to it better than, but I know it was changed when I was here, and it was at a request of the school committee to say, it may have even been, was it ever half day? No, it was off though, right, it was a day off?
It was, right, it was off, and then it was, I think it went back and forth, I mean, honestly, I think it went back, but it was off, then it was on, then we saw, an issue with attendance.
Yeah.
And then it was back off.
It was an off day when I got here, and that change was just made within the last few years, but the teachers have asked about it, so is that something you'd want to consider having it off again?
I mean, yeah, because that's gonna get you back to your more instructional time, so. why not?
You mean taking away 2 half-days and adding Good Friday?
No, just having Good
Just
Friday.
adding Good
as a
Friday.
day off.
That's dangerous at that point.
Yeah, adding a day, it's fine. I do think for like certain religions, and isn't Passover around then too? I don't know. I'm bad with that kind of stuff, but yeah.
April 17th is designated with a beach holiday.
Yes, Patriots Day.
Massachusetts.
Come on, man, we'll go back to history class.
You can't have school on the marathon day though.
Any other comments or questions about the calendar?
Can we vote next week? No, it's free.
Next, April, sorry. I know, it feels like
We're
it's always.
down to the meeting time.
We're back to meeting monthly, guys.
Okay, moving on, we have policy EBCFA first read. Comments or questions, and that's the policy regarding masking.
So I guess I'm not seeing where what Jeff spoke to earlier is incorporated in this. I guess that it would be any decision to require face coverings in school buildings or on buses requires a vote by school committee unless otherwise required by law. All right, that makes sense. Can you guys like explain what you're thinking? A written plan that describes how teaching and learning will be facilitated for those skills where visual expression of the teachers, who would have to provide this written plan? The very last number 2, the implementation of any required masking or plan or policy in BBRSD by voting school committee must include these parameters. A written plan that describes how teaching and learning will be facilitated for those skills where visual expressions of the teacher's faces are necessary or helpful for the student learning. Do you mean the school committee needs to put together a written plan, or
Oh, God, yeah.
Jeff would have to put together a written plan?
We with the schools would, it would be basically, what John and Nays were just talking about today, what they're doing to help students who suffer because of, or falling behind because they have a mask on. So,
And is that something you feel capable of doing in this fair? I mean, seriously.
That's great. Any questions, comments? No, we're okay. All right, so that's our first read. We already did the first read of the Boylston Police Department, the MOU. The elementary literacy coach, coordinator job description, that's the first read as well. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Clearly see a need for it.
you're gonna want to have your name on MOUs, we'll have that put on for the second read, so you'll sign off on it too.
Sure.
Yeah,
All
okay.
right, we already did the school choice recommendations. All right, well, our next dates are April 5th for school committee meetings, May 2nd if needed, and May 24th. Does anybody have any other comments before we adjourn? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So, move second.
Adam and Mike. Roll call, Mike,
Yes, aye.
Megan,
Aye.
Adam, Julie.
Aye.
I am an aye as well. This concludes our meeting.